Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Hey sports fans, are you ready for an exhilarating gaming experience? Introducing VIPclub.lv, your ultimate online sportsbook and casino. VIPclub.lv offers a vast selection of sports, from football and basketball to tennis and baseball. Bet on your favorite teams and enjoy the thrill of the game. But that's not all. Our state-of-the-art online casino offers a dazzling array of games, including slots, blackjack, roulette, and live dealer tables. Win big with their fantastic promotions, rewards, and exclusive offers. Join VIPclub.lv today and get a generous 200% match welcome bonus to start your winning streak. Bet it, win it, and cash it at VIPclub.lv. Visit VIPclub.lv now and play responsibly. VIPclub.lv, your sportsbook and casino extravaganza. Must be 21 or older to play. Please gamble responsibly. Visit gambleware.org for help.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your midday market report for Wednesday, June 7th, 2023. Shout out to Ben Cohen, Joseph, and Cade behind the glass. Shout out to VIP Club, our new sponsor. If you're looking for a new book, someone to window shop to get some lines, go over to VIPclub.lv. Use the promo code ECSI. Tell them we sent you. They'll take care of you. Today is all about the Canadian Open. Today is all about 1 week before the third major, the U.S. Open on Father's Day weekend. But I feel that we're going to talk a little about what happened yesterday. And I'm still in shock. I was talking to Brady behind the desk, and we both had a few little things to say, but, I want to hear it right from Brady, his thoughts. So without further ado, let's bring him on, the star of the show, Mr. Brady Kannon.
How are you, Mr. Dawson? Good to be with you again, once again, this week. And you're right. What a week. We just thought we were just going to roll into Canada here and have a little golf tournament, get ready for a major. And wow, the world of golf blows up. And I'll tell you one thing that's good is you and I are talking about it. Everybody's talking about it. It made the national news on Tuesday, and it was maybe the biggest story in the country. Certainly you could argue one of them. And that's always good for golf. I don't think it was necessarily a negative, or a black eye story that was bad for golf. It was good to have the sport at the forefront of the news cycle. And I think maybe at the end of the day, somehow this is going to all work itself out, and it will be a positive. I think it was probably felt that it was a positive, obviously, for the PGA Tour and the LIV Series. I think they both wanted to get rid of all the lawsuits that were pending and the money that was going to cost both entities. The LIV Tour obviously was, drowning in awful, media ratings. Nobody was watching their product, and they were going nowhere on that front. Like I say, the PGA Tour had those lawsuits pending. So there was reasons for both sides to come to an agreement here and get rid of all that. Apparently, what has happened now is the PGA Tour will still kind of run the show and orchestrate the schedules with the DP World Tour and maybe kind of be the governing body that oversees the three entities, the DP World Tour, the PGA Tour, and the LIV. This is kind of an ongoing situation that we're learning more and more as it develops. And a lot of it is speculation at this point. But, from what we've been able to garner originally, it seems like the PGA Tour kind of will be the operator, if you will. And it's almost if the Saudis and the LIV Tour is the owner, financially anyway. They're a minority investor, I guess, but they've got first right of refusal. And, they really seem to control all the apples on that end of things, which is kind of interesting. And that leads to more questions. Are they going to get involved in other sports now? And So I think at this point, there are more questions than answers about what went down the PGA Tour and the Live merger on Tuesday. We know a lot of the players are not happy, understandably so. I guess, and we'll get into some more topics here surrounding this development, Jeff, but I think first and foremost for you and I, as not only golf fans, but golf handicappers and golf bettors, in the end, I think it's good for us because we've just got a whole new roster of players that came back into the fray here. And who knows when they're all going to tee it up on the same track once again. Obviously, at the U.S. Open, there will be some live players, but who knows what the schedule will look like in 2024. But from a betting and a handicapping standpoint, you've got all those other players back in the mix now. And on my podcast on Tuesday, the Heat Strokes podcast, my co-host, James Mazzola, a very well-respected voice in the golf betting community for sure, he brought up a good point that I hadn't not necessarily thought of. And that's when you have Patrick Reed and Sergio Garcia, Brooks Koepka, we know Cameron Smith, we know those guys are going to be there. They still have a ton of game, and not that Reed and Sergio don't, but they're a little bit more under the radar, but they still can tip the scales in a market. So on a week-to-week event, when I'm looking at, say, kind of a mid-range player to win a golf tournament, I'm trying to come up with a name here, maybe an Aaron Wise. Okay, a healthy and sound Aaron Wise is a top 50 golfer in the world, and you might go into a golf tournament, a random week-to-week tournament, and he's at 35-1. Now you bring the live guys back in, and now Aaron Wise might be at 65-1. So I think this can be good from a betting perspective where we'll get some juicier numbers in the outright markets. And the other thing from a fan perspective, we do get all these guys back in the mix as well. I've never been a fan of Sergio and Patrick Reed. And, I've never watched a live event since the creation of this league. And I still wouldn't be if nothing had changed here today. I've said it before, possibly on your show. I miss Dustin Johnson. I like watching Dustin Johnson play a golf tournament and the way he saunters around like John Wayne when he's at the peak of his game. And I just like watching the way he goes about his business. Koepka, of course, is absolutely always something to pay attention to in the majors. Other than that, I didn't really care about any of the guys on the tour or like many of the guys on the tour. It was kind of the villain tour, right? Well, now we're going to have all the villains back in the mix, and that's good for the game too. So just a ton of things to discuss on this topic. I'm sure we'll get into more, but there's my initial 4-minute spiel for you.
We could talk the whole show, as I'm putting my notes together in my head, and I'm saying, well, we're here for the Canadian Open. We're here to give some outrights. We're here to give some head-to-head, some first-round leaders. And the whole damn show could be talked just about this live.
Sure.
And I don't want to drown the whole show about that because I'd keep you here for 3 hours, and I know you got other shows and other things. So we got you for a short window. And I know the bottom line here is money. As you said, now the PGA can breathe because it's technically now the Saudi Arabia money, the way I understand it, is going to be funding the PGA, correct?
Yeah, I don't know the exact ins and outs of it either, but yes, as far as the competition between these tours, that was certainly, one advantage that the Saudis, the PIF, Public Investment Fund, had in a huge way over the tour. The tour was not going to be able to compete money-wise, not a chance. So yeah, that is a natural reason to merge right there in the tour's eyes. And yeah, the way, the news is coming down the pipe here that we're just getting, not, I guess, about 24 hours after the fact, it looks like from a financial aspect, yeah, the PIF is absolutely in control.
Go back to the Masters, and especially, I think it was on Sunday, there was a late rally by a lot of the live golfers, Phil Mickelson, and there was a handful of others, and of course, Brooks right there, the whole tournament. And then you look at the next major, and then who's holding up the trophy, but Brooks. So almost like they were the cast-offs, yet in the majors in the PGA, the first two this year, it was the live guys kind of stealing the show for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. They were certainly the story at the Masters with Brooks, carrying the lead for 54 holes. And then, like you mentioned, the real Sunday charge where I want to say you had 4 or 5 live golfers in the top 20 at Augusta. And oddly enough, it was only about a week after that these talks began between the leader of the PIF and the live and what have you, and Jay Monahan. And I mean, I really think there was only 4 or 5 guys involved in this room, if you will, Zoom meetings and what have you. But, this was obviously incredibly secretive. Greg Norman, the CEO, didn't even know about it. Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods, Colin Morikawa made a comment on Twitter yesterday. These guys found out about it, and Norman too. They found out about it the same way you and I did. I said this yesterday too. When I first saw that scroll across my Twitter screen, I thought it was a joke. And then I kept, then it's trending. And next thing I know, I realized it was not a joke at all. But yeah, a very closed door meeting, if you will, that began about a week or so after the Masters. Then I'm sure the Brooks Koepka victory at the PGA probably fueled the fire. And, Jeff, like I said, I think in the end, for fans and bettors and handicappers like we are, it's going to be a good thing. And I'm kind of excited about it. These guys will get everything worked out. Jay Monahan might be gone, and Greg Norman probably will be. I wouldn't be surprised if both of those guys are gone, and I kind of want them to be. Now, Norman did his job, and you can say that he won this battle. Norman has been fighting for a World Golf Tour like this for 30 years. I mean, he created basically the World Golf Championship, or it was his idea anyway. And then Tim Fincham, the then commissioner of the PGA Tour, created that. Well, now Norman has taken a second stab at creating this World Tour, and it looks like it's going to happen. I think in the end, he'll probably be removed. He was the face of the deal and the marketing director, if you will, of the deal, and the thorn in the PGA Tour's side for the last year and a half. He's done his job. I'm sure he's getting handsomely paid, and he can probably walk off now and fade into the sunset. He accomplished, I think, what they wanted to do. But now they'll probably restructure, reorganize, and put whomever in charge. And I don't know how the PGA Tour can carry on with Jay Monahan either. And you can make an argument that he's done wonderfully for the tour because now their pockets are full, even though they're not necessarily in control of that bankroll. He's going to make all these players richer in the end, but he also failed everybody at the same time and misled them possibly. The players have to feel betrayed. So there's a lot of moving parts going on, but in the end, I think, again, bettors, fans, and golf handicappers will be rewarded. The players will eventually be compensated somehow, some way. Monahan and Norman will probably be out when we head into 2024 or whenever it is, and we kind of start anew with a fresh slate and go forward as one. And I think eventually this will be an okay thing that will be more enjoyable for all of us in the end.
It's almost like the hatred towards Roger Goodell and the 30 or 32 owners that are all billionaires, and they're paying them handsomely 50, 60 million a year. It costs them each, about $1 million, $1.5 million to keep everyone else quiet. But at the end of the day, these guys are making money. And as you just clearly stated, they're going to have to kiss and make up. Because you know what? At the end, everyone is, as you said, going to make more money. And as I stated before we started the show, I really feel for Rory. I feel for a Justin Thomas. I feel for Morikawa. Tiger Woods, who turned down $800 million. Yet we're all going to allow these guys back. And when Phil bends down to put his tee down to tee off, his wallet's sitting there with hundreds of millions of dollars. And then you can see a Morikawa, Justin, or a Rory saying, I could have had that money too, but I stayed here to defend the PGA.
Well, I think eventually, that initial sting, I'm sure, is going to linger for a minute. I think Rory's the type of person, John Rahm, some of these guys that stood up to defend the tour and what is right. I think that mindset absolutely still exists. There was kind of the anti-live, Saudi, the 9/11, the human rights, everything that was wrong with kind of, selling your soul, if you will. I don't know if that really changes. So I think eventually after that financial, possible windfall kind of goes by the wayside, I think these guys will feel good about their decision and they'll be okay. And I know I would be. They took the high road. Now, whatever happens in business after the fact, I think that time will heal those wounds. The other thing is, I think there's going to be some actual dollars that'll heal those wounds as well. I don't know how the PGA Tour cannot say, "Hey, Rory, come here. We've got an envelope for you in the back." I think there's going to have to be some compensation for these guys, and it's not going to happen from top to bottom across the PGA Tour. But, the notables, Hideki Matsuyama turned down a lot of money. I'm sure John Rahm did. I don't know how many guys were offered money, but I'm sure it was probably at least 20, 30, maybe another 40 players that I have to believe are going to be taken care of somehow, and probably not just in the form of a payment. Maybe it will be. But they have to give these guys something for their efforts. They did a job too. They were the soldiers that stood by the PGA Tour for the last year and a half or so. And you've got to take care of these guys or they're going to absolutely be disgruntled employees.
Before we dive into the RBC, I want to take you back to Sunday morning. We're looking at the leaderboard, and for the average person, you got to be sitting there saying, of course, this is Rory's tournament to have here. And then you wake up and you see a Morikawa 2 back and withdraws because of back spasms. And then, of course, the conspiracy theory, people out on social media, they're like, hey, Rory didn't win. Morikawa's only 2 back, and wink, wink, he couldn't play the final round with a potential chance to win. In comes Victor, who I got in every damn major to steal the show here. Bring us back to Sunday. Your initial thoughts of Colin, Rory not closing the deal. Scheffler, an amazing Sunday. And,
man,
that one bogey on 16, I think it was, or 17, really, he would have got into that playoff. What was your thoughts on Sunday?
Well, first of all, Scheffler, boy, this guy is absolutely unreal. At the halfway point, he was 11 shots behind the leader. He was still in black figures. He was still, over par for the tournament and manages to finish a shot out of the playoff. He is really incredible. And we talked about it on your show last week that he just seems to finish top 5 every week. He did it again. And he was so far back. The accomplishment almost more impressive than Victor Hovland's win, but you can also, pat Victor Hovland on the back as well. He was, I want to say, let's see, he was at -2. And I think the leader was at -8. He was about 5 or 6 shots back at the halfway point. And I wrote an article for the PGA Tour that he was a guy I would not bet on, to win this golf tournament going forward. And I still have that lingering thought that he was going to eventually run out of gas after all that he went through at the PGA Championship. Then, came to Colonial and we saw some of the gas or some of the wheels start to fall off on Sunday with some mistakes that he made. And we even saw some at the Memorial. But, he proved me wrong. He never really had that post-PGA letdown. But as far as the odds were concerned, he had about, I want to say, 22 golfers and big names. You talked about Morikawa. There was a number of big names amongst those 22 players that were trailing. I'm trying to remember who the leader was at the halfway point at the time. But there was a lot of, premier players at a premier golf tournament, obviously an elevated field. And Victor Hovland at 5 or 6 shots back was trading at only 35-1. And what I wrote was, hey, we know about Victor Hovland, been playing some great golf lately. And you might think 35-1 looks pretty juicy. Truly, his odds should be about 75-1. They're making you pay a premium for the name here. And boy, he pulled it off. Absolutely unbelievable. And a lot of it was because of the attrition. The guys came back to the pack. You had the first round leader at 5 under. After the second day, the leader was 8 under. And going into Sunday, the leader was at 6 under. So one shot better than they were on Thursday. So Jack's course got tougher. The wind kicked up a little bit. And, that certainly helped a guy like Victor Hovland. Rory, I just still think he's off a tick. I was surprised by the round that he put together on Sunday. He was tied for the lead, the co-leader going into the final round. And I didn't know if he was going to pull it off. From an odds perspective, I wasn't going to invest in him. I thought the best investment, and again, I wrote this for the PGA Tour, was Siwoo Kim. This guy was tied for the lead, and he was still double digits to win this tournament, and he almost pulled it off. And then Morikawa, just a mystery there, Jeff. He has been struggling as of late, and maybe it's, because of something physically. And we finally saw it manifest in the way of back spasms or what have you. I haven't seen a whole lot more come out of that. Maybe he was just feeling a little tweak or a twinge or something like that and said, hey, I've got the US Open coming up pretty soon, and I'm not going to press it. I really have not looked into the reasoning behind that. I feel for the guy. I don't think this is a guy that won the Workday charity event at this same golf course a few years back during the COVID years. And this is Mr. Jack Nicklaus too. I don't think a guy would ever, and especially the guy of a character of Colin Morikawa, I don't think he would ever ditch this event for anything other than a pretty serious reason. So I root for him. I hope he's healing up nicely. I imagine he'll be fine when we tee it up next week in Los Angeles, and he'll certainly be a contender in that field. And I hope the game turns around for him. It's really, it was the tournament. And I think you and I are both in the same camp here. We remember it all too well when he blew it at Kapalua to kick off the year. I was on him at 25-1 or whatever it was and thought I had that one wrapped up with about an 11-shot lead or so. And he had a couple of very good events to follow that. He played well at Torrey Pines, and I believe it was the Genesis Invitational as well, top 10 finishes. But after that, it really has bottomed out, and he hasn't done a whole lot. He's missed some cuts. So hopefully he returns to form here when we tee it up next week in Los Angeles, and we see something better out of Colin Morikawa in his play and hopefully health-wise as well.
RBC, I'm looking at DraftKings right now. Rory McIlroy plus 550, Tyrrell Hatton 11-1 with Sam Burns, Matt Fitzpatrick, Cameron Young all at 14-1, Justin Rose at 18-1. Tommy Fleetwood and Shane Lowry at plus 2,000. Corey Connors, 22-1. I have him in both my one and dones. I'm throwing out the Canadian. This is my one time to let him shine there. Number that kind of surprises me. And I've been waiting and waiting for this gentleman, 25-1, Mr. Thigala. He's been lingering. And then I went a little further, and a good first round guy. I'd be interested in your thoughts here. Keith Mitchell is at plus 4,000 with Matty Kuchar and Adrian Moronock. So that's just the front page of the leaderboard there. I'm going to do what I do best here and turn the RBC Canadian Open over to you, my friend.
Well, I think you make some good points there. And Thigala did make my card in one market. We'll get to that in just a moment. First of all, I made 5 outright plays and a couple of head-to-head matchups and then a few first-round leader plays. Now, people that are familiar with this show or find me, in different outlets or what have you, I always talk about the first-round leader market as being one that you want to tread lightly on. It's the hardest bet to hit probably in, the entire golf menu. Certainly you're facing the worst odds. And I always preach that you don't want to extend yourself too much in that market. So that's always a pizza money, funny money stuff for me in the first round leader market. But in the head-to-head matchups and also the outright market this week, I dumb down the risk the way I do with, say, the Dell Match Play, the team event, the Zurich Classic of New Orleans. I believe it was the Mexico Open at Vedanta. That is not a completely new golf course, but very little history. I think it was only the third playing this year, that golf course in that tournament on the PGA Tour. So when we have some nuances to the format or a new golf course like we do here for the RBC Canadian Open, Oakdale Golf and Country Club, the first time ever in the 117-year history of the Canadian Open that this golf course has actually played host to it. So when we have something that is relatively unknown like that, I don't want to get involved as heavily until we have maybe some more data to go off of. So I have dumbed down the risk in the outright market and the head-to-head matchups. I played 2 shorter shots and 3 long bombs. There's been a number of withdrawals this week. You have a number of guys pulling out of this field. I think that is certainly, in response to the PGA Live merger for one reason or another. I don't know exactly, but this field has been thinned out and replaced with a lot of alternates. At the top of the board, I started with Tyrrell Hatton. The guy just made sense in a number of statistics that I look at. I think he's having maybe the best year of his career. I used, as far as correlated courses, I went with courses that can kind of turn into a birdie fest, courses that have like tree-lined fairways, and courses that have very small greens. Now, not all of these courses fit all of those categories, but in general, that's what I was looking at as a possible match to what we have here at Oakdale. Small greens, could be a possible birdie fest here, tree-lined fairways. So TPC Craig Ranch, the American Express and La Quinta, Colonial Country Club, Pebble Beach, and then last year's Canadian Open, St. George's Golf and Country Club. And Tyrrell Hatton has a 5th place finish this year at the Byron Nelson at TPC Craig Ranch. Also has an 8th place finish at Colonial. 5 top 10 finishes this year, 2 top 15s and 1 top 20. In the last 36 rounds, he is 4th in this field for strokes gained on approach. He is 2nd for good drives gained, and he is 3rd in birdies or better. So, I know he's at a short price. I actually got him at plus 1350, so a pretty good number there. And I think this guy seems to be in contention every week. He had another top 15 last week at the Memorial. So I think the guy will be, giving us a Sunday sweat in some form or fashion once again. And then I went down just a little deeper to Justin Rose and found a good number on him as well at 23-1. This guy, a former winner at Colonial, won earlier this season at Pebble Beach. He was 4th last year at St. George's for the Canadian Open. Last 36 rounds, he is 2nd in the field in strokes gained approach, 24th for strokes gained around the green, 9th in good drives gained, and 9th for birdies or better. And then after Hatton and Rose, I went into the triple digits. The Todd father, as you like to call him, Jeff, Brendan Todd, at 100-1. Tremendous short game here. And it rode him all the way to a 13th place finish last year at the Canadian Open. We'll see if he can maybe do a little better than that this year. But number 1 in this field for strokes gained putting the last 36 rounds on a bent Poana blend green. That's what we have as far as the grasses here. Bent grass and Poana, a blend on those greens. Number 1 in strokes gained putting, Brendan Todd. Number 1 in strokes gained around the green, and number 1 in this field for approach shots from 75 to 100 yards. So this guy's short game is off the charts. And if he can get it done from tee to green, that short game ought to hold up here pretty well. Mark Hubbard at 100-1. This guy's iron play has really been good. I think it's maybe his best year of his career on tour. Had a 20th place finish at Pebble Beach, had a top 10 just a couple weeks ago at Colonial. Over the last 36 rounds, this guy is 6th in this field for strokes gained approach. So Hubbard, I think, is a sneaky good long bomb. And a lot of the guys that I've been talking to this week, I hate to see it when so many of us are on one guy. But Mark Hubbard, I've seen, is a very popular long shot between some people that I respect. And then you look at my final play, and I went all the way to 150-1 with Nate Lashley. He is 7th in this field, right behind Hubbard over the last 36 rounds in strokes gained approach, 13th in good drives gained, and 21st in birdies or better. He's got a couple of top 25 finishes at TPC Craig Ranch. He's got a top 15 at the American Express, and it wasn't that long ago that he finished 5th at Pebble Beach. So I think there's a lot of reasons to think that 150 might be a little long on a guy that actually makes some sense at this golf course.
Well, I love the thought process. And as you were starting, you talked about the week before a major, you add the live drama. And the thought is, you grab two guys up top and then you take the three bombs in the back and you use, the dummying down effect as we're getting ready for next week in the U.S. Open. Hats off. I love that thought process.
Well, not only do you have a major pending, now you've got, the story of the week and the merger. How is that? I mean, do I really want any part of Rory McIlroy this week?
No.
Probably not. That's obviously, I mean, this guy admitted to the fact that it was wearing on him, carrying the torch for the PGA Tour and the distraction that caused. Now, you might argue that this frees him up and he can go out here and play golf once again. I don't really want either part of it. And trying to play, sideline psychologist and figure out what's in the heads of all these guys this week is a very, very difficult part of this handicap. I made all these bets prior to this story coming out on Tuesday. And maybe some of them I made, early Tuesday morning, but it was prior to this news coming out. And I don't have a problem with any of the bets that I made. Was Tyrrell Hatton offered live money? Was Justin Rose? I would say probably. I don't know for sure. But I also think those guys were not necessarily in that fray full-fledged. And I think you can also make an argument that it's good that there is a major coming up the following week. Justin Rose, a former U.S. Open winner. Tyrrell Hatton still seeking his first major championship. That has to be their mindset. That has to be the focus, that their game needs to be peaking right now. And they can't let this distraction, seep into the minds of what's going on in their game this week here in Canada. So I'm banking on those guys trying to block that out. There are other guys in this field, namely Rory McIlroy, maybe a Matthew Fitzpatrick. It's hard to say. It's certainly probably the more prominent players that could be affected by this. And then the long bombs that I have on Hubbard and Todd and Lashley, I don't know if live was ever really a thing for these guys, and they may have just gotten another pay raise. So, going back and going over this handicap again and anything made after the fact, I think you probably want to stay away from some of the guys that are more, in the thick of this story that we have going on, because it's hard to predict how they're going to respond to it, but also dumbing down the risk, Jeff, just simply for the fact that we've never seen this golf course before. I have a feeling it's going to play very similar to many of the courses we've seen in the past that have hosted the Canadian Open. But again, you have to tread a little lightly because we have not seen what Oakdale is going to do in the past.
Before we get to first round leaders head-to-heads, surprised Rory is going to show up here. I mean, he could withdraw and just say, hey, you know what? We got a major next week. And with all this drama, you know what, guys? I'm going to put the torch down for the week and let someone else carry it. I'm going to move on and get ready for the U.S. Open.
I think it would be easy to do, but I think that's also the character of Rory McIlroy. There might not be a time where he more so needs to kind of stand up and be strong and carry the torch once again for his peers on the PGA Tour and say, hey, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to walk away. Yes, we need to swallow this and think about it and talk and negotiate and what have you. And that's going to come down the road in the future. But like you said, Jeff, we've got a major championship to play here pretty quick. I owe it to the people of Canada. I'm a two-time defending champion here. They did not play the Canadian Open in 2020 or 2021, but Rory, a winner in 2019 and in 2022. So he is technically the two-time defending champion, and you got to hand it to him for holding up his end of the bargain here and the fans in Canada. And I think he loves it here. And hopefully he plays well. And I think the locals there north of the border will absolutely cheer him on and be 100% behind him if he does play well here this week. It's a tough, again, psychology to crack in what it's going to do to these guys. But, for the most part, I stayed away from the Rorys and the possible guys that have storylines affecting their games, and tried to gravitate to guys that I see that have more on their plate, more to be concerned with than this elephant in the room.
Your choice, head-to-head or first-round leaders?
Well, head-to-head matchups real quick here. I just played 2 of them, and it was actually a couple guys that I landed on for outrights as well. I have seen these prices change. If you can find them at around a pick 'em or so, I'm still okay with it. But I got plus money on Nate Lashley at plus 110 over Dylan Wu, and I got Brendan Todd at plus 110 over Michael Kim. Again, if you can find him at pick 'em, I'm still okay with that. I know some people that have gone against Rory McIlroy in head-to-head matchups because of, what could possibly end up being a big distraction for him. I saw Tyrrell Hatton and Matthew Fitzpatrick paired against Rory in head-to-head matchups, but certainly they're not in the fray as much as Rory was or is, but they're a little bit a part of this story too, as a couple of the top players in the game, and Matt Fitzpatrick getting ready to defend his U.S. Open title too. So I didn't get involved in the anti-Rory play, and I know that I will not be doing that, but something to think about. And it makes sense. We see that all the time in sports. Things happen and it's like, okay, this guy's dealing with this. He just got married. They could be tragic, they could be distracting, whatever it is. But in the world of sports betting, sometimes we have to find those situations where we think a guy could be compromised or a guy could be motivated, what have you, and go that direction or against it with our money. Personally, I'm staying away from the Rory storyline this week.
And your first-round leaders?
Yeah, first-round leader, I went with Tommy Fleetwood at 33-1. And this is another guy that is a big-time player, one of the best players in the world. But, again, trying to play sideline psychologist here, I think we've all seen the personality of Tommy Fleetwood. He seems very happy-go-lucky. He's always smiling. He's a positive guy. I don't think this type of thing bothers him. And more so, Tommy Fleetwood is still trying to get his first win on the PGA Tour. He's won all over the world multiple times, but he's never won on the PGA Tour. And I think that is the bigger prize at hand for him. He will be a contender, or expects to be, next week for the U.S. Open. So all of that takes precedence, I believe, in a big way for Tommy Fleetwood. We know he's a world-class player. So I'm guessing that the live situation is not going to bother him as much as it might some other guys. The last 36 rounds, he is 3rd in this field for strokes gained approach, 9th for strokes gained around the green, and 17th in birdies or better gained. Secondly, I went to your guy that we mentioned earlier. I mentioned that I found a place for him on my card, and that is Sahith Theegala, also at 33-1. And here's another guy that is a little bit lower on the PGA Tour pecking order, if you will, certainly ascending with every week, it seems, and playing very well in major championships too, but he's not quite in the thick of that spotlight that is the PGA Tour live controversy, and he's a wonderful player. He's also another guy like Fleetwood that is probably focused on getting his first PGA Tour win before he decides to start, subjecting himself to the other stuff that's going on right now. This guy wants to win. He wants to contend in another championship. He's a tremendous putter on the bent grass Poana blended greens. The last 36 rounds, he is 14th in this field for strokes gained putting. He is also 2nd for birdies or better gained, and 20th for strokes gained approach. So the game is there, and I think the mindset could be there for Sahith Theegala as well to possibly be a first-round leader. And then I did go with a longer bomb. And let me also say, Jeff, I think this tournament could be very ripe for a longer bomb, whether it be first-round leader or just an outright winner. Because, and not just, this is pre-PGA, this is pre-merger, if you will. I think this could have gone to a long shot with kind of a random field. It's not overloaded with the big names. And now you have all the withdrawals post-merger. So there could be a lot of randomness here and possibly some long shots falling this week. I did go with 2 of the shorter shots in the first-round leader market, but did go with a bomb here at 80-1 in Vincent Norman. And this guy's a really good player from Sweden, played college golf at Florida State. And just recently, he's been killing it on the PGA Tour. In the last 12 rounds, he ranks 4th in this field for strokes gained tee to green. He's a long bomber. He is 25th on tour for total driving, and he ranks 59th in first round scoring average. But now back to the psychology handicap as well, or the situational handicap. Vincent Norman is a tour rookie. He was probably never involved in any live conversation. Maybe they approached him, who knows, but you have to believe he was not high on the list. And this guy's just at this point trying to make a career for himself and doing a very good job of it currently. So I don't know how much the live, deal is on his mind. Again, he's trying to make a cut every week. He's trying to win a PGA Tour event every week. He's a PGA Tour rookie. This is probably affecting him a lot less than his veteran peers. So, again, I tried to play sideline psychologist in a few of these first round leader markets after the fact, after the story came out. I think it's a very tough task to try and tackle because, as I mentioned, this story is continually developing and we really don't know what these guys are thinking, if it affects them at all. You talked about Corey Connors. I typically, for the Canadian Open, have an annual, regimen of not betting on Canadians in this tournament. We haven't seen one win this event in 70 some years. Mike Weir back in the day could never get it done. There is seemingly more pressure on these locals, if you will, Canadians, to win their national Open, that they just succumb to that pressure eventually. And it's just so insurmountable, it seems, for these guys. So I stay away from them. Now, with this story, the merger now taking over the headlines, maybe this benefits the Canadians, that the story and the spotlight is no longer on them. So there's a number of different angles you can look at and try and analyze what this story has done psychologically, situationally to this field. But boy, it's a tough task to try and figure that all out and get it right. So, again, that's another reason probably to tread lightly this week.
Again, we're 42 minutes deep. I got you here on overtime, and we just kind of scratched the surface. I mean, we could talk for hours about live. We could dig deeper here. We have a PGA major with the U.S. Open next weekend, and later today on Sports Map Radio, earlier tonight on the Sports Grid TV after, and this is the busy time for you. This is, I guess, what we signed up for, right?
No doubt about it. It's golf season, and it just got a whole lot heavier with what dropped on Tuesday. Still 2 more majors to go. Obviously, the U.S. Open coming up, and then the British Open in July. Right when it settles down, let's say, at the mid-August, when the FedEx Cup playoffs are just kind of starting to finish up. Well, that's when football starts. So I think I'm kind of lucky to specialize in PGA Tour golf and NFL football because I'm never juggling too many things at once. But boy, right now, the golf just put a little extra weight on our shoulders as far as trying to figure this stuff out.
Well, the scroller's been going the whole time, but I'm going to allow you just tell everyone where they can find your work, Brady.
Well, best of all, probably to follow my Twitter feed at Las Vegas Golfer. I typically update that with everything that I'm doing. I write for the PGA Tour. I write a first round leader column that comes out on Wednesdays. I write a mid-range or a mid-tournament report after the cut that comes out on Friday nights. You can find that at Golf Bet, which is on the menu there at PGAtour.com. I come on with you, of course, every week, Jeff. I'm on 3 times a week at Sports Grid. And then I also have my own podcast, the Heat Strokes podcast, which you can find, anywhere where you get your podcasts, and also at my YouTube channel at Heat Strokes Podcast. So I appreciate you giving me the floor to dole all that out, but probably as far as a one-stop shop, just check the Twitter handle there at Las Vegas Golfer, and you can stay informed.
Well, it's a busy, busy week for all here on next Tuesday, 8 p.m. You and I will be here to break down the U.S. Open. I can't wait. I got some work to do, obviously, here on the DraftKings Sportsbook to add some stuff to my portfolio for the weekend. We can't thank you enough. We will be talking later tonight, and obviously I will catch you on the rerun on the Sports Grid TV also.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you. Go follow Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer. Please go over to Heat Strokes Pod and jump over to YouTube at Heat Strokes Pod and subscribe there. In a few minutes, myself and Andrew McGinnis at Wager Talk will be talking NHL Hockey Stanley Cup and the kickoff of the CFL football. Stay tuned.